I'm going to be demonstrating a wolf in colored pencil and airbrushing. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today's demonstration is this wolf. My reference photo comes from wildlifereferencephotos.com. The background I have airbrushed, and the wolf was completed using Luminance and Polychromos colored pencils. If you are supporters over on Patreon, the 2-hour version of this video is available for you guys right now, complete with voiceover tips. We hit our latest milestone goal, so I have upgraded my computer, which means we get to have voiceovers on every single weekly long video over on Patreon. So yay, thank you guys so much. Now let's get on to the tutorial. I've started by covering my entire wolf with masking fluid and frisket. I have a video coming very soon showing you exactly how I do that. My airbrush colors are black, brown, and white. I don't want a lot of detail here because I want the focus to be my wolf. The last step for my background was to use a damask stencil over my entire forest. Onto the wolf. I am starting with the nose because it's one of the darkest areas, which makes it a lot easier for me to judge my values when I move on to the white fur. I'm using various shades of purple, blue, black, and gray, and paying very, very close attention to my reference photo. Don't rush over areas like the nose or inside of the ears thinking they aren't important. Every single area of your piece is just as important as every other area. The nose is not a solid black mass. Pay close attention to all the tiny details when your goal is realism. If you're having a hard time noticing all of that detail and getting those shapes correctly, try working with your drawing upside down. This forces your brain to see shapes instead of thinking, I already know how this looks, and drawing it wrong. When you start working on the fur, pay very close attention to the direction of that fur. Don't start throwing a bunch of random lines all over. It won't look right. You also want to watch how long each pencil line is. On the muzzle here, I don't want long pencil strokes or I'll make it look like the fur is abnormally long there. I'm keeping my pencil lines short to reflect the shorter fur. Every time you see me working with a paintbrush, I'm using Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner to blend out my colors. I have a video showing you exactly how to do that, and I will have a link for that below in the video description. For the white fur, notice how dark the values actually are. Very, very little in this piece will stay white, besides my edges where the wolf is backlit. The rest of the fur is going to be varying shades of grays, blues, and browns. White is reflective. It's going to pick up whichever colors are in the background. Because I have a grayish toned background, I've got to use those grayish and brown tones in the wolf. Had I painted my background blue or orange, I would be using more blue or orange tones in the wolf. Anywhere that you want to keep totally white, you need to leave that white of the paper showing through. Colored pencils aren't like working in acrylic or oil paint. That white can't be placed on top of a dark color and come out looking totally white again. These pencils aren't that opaque. You can lighten up an area, but it'll never be totally white. So you want to make sure that you protect any areas that you want to stay white to begin with. What I like to do is use my wax-based pencil, that is the Luminance for me, in white over any area that's going to stay white. That protects the paper from getting too much of another color on top of it. My first layers, I don't push very hard with a pencil because that would damage the tooth of the paper, limiting the amount of layering that I can do. Instead, I work with a very light hand until my final details. I know it appears that I'm pushing quite hard because of the angle of my middle finger, but I'm really not. Now, I'm not finished with the muzzle, but I decided to move on to the side of the head and the ear. Once I get those darker areas blocked in, it makes it easier for me to judge my values. I knew that the fur on the face wasn't quite dark enough, but I don't want to go too dark and not be able to lighten it back up. With colored pencil, it is always better to go too light and then darken as needed than to start out too dark and try to lighten it up. I went through and sketched in my clumps of fur on the neck so that I didn't lose them from my initial drawing. Having those lines darkened up makes it easier for me to keep my place in the fur. The paper under my hand is glassine. It is acid-free and the colored pencil won't stick to it, so I don't have any issues with smudging. The way that the fur clumps and the direction of those clumps all determine the underlying bone and muscular structure of your subject. If you throw in shadows and highlights in the wrong place, it'll make your subject appear deformed. I don't want to include each strand of fur either, or he'll look wiry. I just need to follow the general motion and the length of the fur and how it clumps. Notice that while some of the shorter bits of fur on the muzzle are straight, as I move on to the longer fur, almost all of that fur has a bit of curve to it. For the areas of white fur that fall within the shadows, I can shade the paper a gray tone and then use the white luminance pencil, which is the most opaque one that I've used, over it to create the fur. The white does not, of course, come out showing totally white, but it does create lighter fur strokes that blend nicely with the shadowed fur. If you watched my more recent portraits in colored pencil, I talked a lot about how much paint thinner you want on your brush depending on the layer that you're working on to get a very smooth finish. When working in fur, you get to be a bit lazier about it. I use quite a bit of paint thinner on the brush because I'm not actually going for a totally smooth look. The one thing that you do want to watch out for is blending dark areas that are right next to pale areas. Here, you want to make sure to blend them separately, meaning don't run your brush right from the dark on top of the light colors. The paint thinner itself is a brush cleaner, so just dip the brush into the paint thinner and wipe it off on a paper towel in between layers, and that will clean the brush completely so you don't end up smudging colors into each other that you don't want mixed. Once I've got my general pattern laid out, I start going back through with the darker tones and lighter tones to better define each of those clumps of fur. My initial layers are fairly dull. I don't have tons and tons of contrast. I'm going through with the white pencil anywhere that I'm going to want to say really light. I've added that white luminance first, and now I'm shading the darker areas on top. When I go over this and blend it out with paint thinner, those areas that I put the white down first, you'll see will come back white. The darker colors don't really stick that well. You can see those few white clumps that are really light. That is because the white luminance was there first. That lime pencil that you're seeing me use is a ink eraser made by Faber-Castell. It works so great with colored pencil. The one that I'm using is from Mexico with the green outside casing. The one available in the US is also by Faber-Castell, but it's got a cream colored casing. But the actual eraser inside is the same either way. At this point of the fur, I'm really just focusing on better defining my clumps, making sure that the fur is moving in the right direction and getting my darks in there so that when I come on top with the white luminance pencil, my brush strokes or my pencil lines with the fur really show up. But I've got to get that fairly dark first. You can see now with the white, with that colored pencil, how nicely that shows up against it. Again, not 100% white. If I needed 100% white, I would have needed to let the paper show through. But it softens everything out quite nicely. Now, if doing this much fur gets a bit overwhelming to you, you can break it down 1 square inch at a time. Do one little bit before you move on to the next bit. I jump around a lot. I work in colored pencil very much how I paint, where I'm kind of doing layers. But either way, whichever makes it easier for you. I'm just going to keep building and building until my clumps are better defined. I'm using the darker browns and grays right over a lot of this to darken them up. And that is it for this guy. For anyone interested, I have all of the colors that I used on this piece listed below in the video description. Thanks for watching. Again, if you are supporters over on Patreon, the 2-hour version of this video is available for you to watch now, complete with voiceover. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, social media tips for artists each Thursday, and artist vlogs every weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google+, all those social media sites. The links are below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I actually have a 5-minute real-time clip of this piece over on Facebook right now that you can watch. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the social media vlog. Why, Ghost? Why did you not protect Jon? Where were you when he needed you? Were any of you Game of Thrones fans concerned about where Ghost was during this whole thing? He better not be dead. Also, is it sad that I'm more concerned about the wolf than I am Jon Snow? I've got issues.